Welcome everyone to our webinar today. Our presenter this afternoon is Darragh Fitzpatrick, the Executive Vice President here at Tabush Group. Darragh has been involved in corporate IT for over 20 years. He joined Tabush Group in 2005 and became a partner in 2009. Since then, he has focused on the professional services client base, helping them take a strategic approach to their IT and ensure it is being used to enable and grow their business. In 2015, Darragh helped lead the development of BoxTop, a unique and fully cloud-based IT environment designed for law and professional service firms, and has been instrumental in its growth and success. As an avid technologist, Darragh is continually educating himself on the latest technologies, products, and services to see which can be beneficial to the firm's clients. Originally from Limerick, Ireland, Darragh has a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from the University of Greenwich in London. Darragh crossed the pond in 2001 and has been living in New York ever since. Darragh has extensive experience speaking on the topics of cybersecurity and cloud for non-tech savvy audiences. Before I hand the mic over to Darragh, just to let everybody know, there will be a Q&A session after the presentation, so feel free to jot down any questions you have in the chat section of this webinar, and we will try to get to them all afterwards. Darragh, take it away.
Thanks for that introduction, Morris, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to provide information that will answer the following questions. What is ransomware? How does it get in our systems? Once in, what does it do? How can we protect our applications and data? And finally, if there is a breach, how should we respond? So first, let's start with a history of viruses and malware. 25 years ago, hacking became popular as a hobby. People built malicious software, placed their signature on it so that it caused a big issue, they could get the kudos in the hacking community. It was fun for these people. There was no real agenda. The viruses and malware they created slowed down and crashed computers, and it sometimes but rarely deleted files. At that time, we used to transfer files to each other by floppy disks or CDs, and therefore that is how viruses were transferred and how they infected programs, documents, and people's systems. Then the World Wide Web arrived, or as we call it now, the internet came about. It changed computing and changed the world. This meant we were all interconnected. We started sending emails to each other and visiting websites for information. Very quickly, hackers saw this as an avenue to spread viruses and malware more quickly and to increase the availability for viruses and malware to cause damage. Utilizing the internet to attack people in this way led to the common use of the term cyber attacks. So what is a cyber attack? Firstly, a cyber attack is generally targeted. There are many ways in which they are carried out. Poor access management is a common occurrence. This is where a hacker acquires a valid username and password into a system. This is what happened in the case of Target's large breach a few years ago. Outside of that, there are many different technical ways in which a cyber attack may occur. It basically is a barrage of different techniques used by a hacker on a system, poking to find a weakness, then exploiting that weakness when it is found. You may have heard such terms as DDoS, keylogging, cross-scripting, clickjacking, etc., to describe many of these techniques that are used. Cyber attacks target major businesses based on the value of the information they are destroying or stealing. Of course, the most recent and now probably the most damaging attack ever in the US was just publicized last week, the breach at Equifax. Over 140 million people's personal private information relating to their credit has been compromised. It was targeted for very specific reasons. The data attained has the possibility to be used to generate enormous amounts of fraudulent dollars. A lot of work and planning was put into this to ensure its success. These are the type of breaches the media covers. They are big stories due to the fact that they can affect a huge percentage of the population. However, when was the last time you read or heard the story of the small law firm that had a security breach and the impact it had? The fact that most media coverage is about large companies lends credence, incorrectly I may add, that small to mid-sized business owners like all of us are really not at risk. Yet 60% of security breaches in the US occur to small and mid-sized businesses. We will get to that next. First, let's talk about another enabler of the latest type of malware, relevant to all of us, Bitcoin. In 2009, Bitcoin was created to allow for people to be paid anonymously in online currency. This revolutionized cyber attacks, turning it into a business rather than a hobby. This new anonymous payment system enabled a new type of malware which became known as ransomware, which is now extremely prevalent. In the 1950s, a famous bank robber, Willie Sutton, was asked why he robbed banks. He answered, because that's where the money is. That is now the same incentive for the development and distribution of ransomware. Malware has now been monetized. So firstly, what does ransomware actually do? Once activated on a PC, it will execute and will encrypt every file and document it can see on both your local PC and any shared drives it can access, immediately making all your files inaccessible to you and your team. Once something is encrypted, the only way you can gain access to it again is to attain the encryption code to unlock the encryption, so to speak. There are multiple ways to get infected, but the key ways are through visiting an infected website, or more commonly, getting infected through email. This is where somebody receives an email that contains a Word document, a PDF, or a web link. Each is either the malware itself or downloads the malware to that person's PC. So the infection has occurred. What's next? Well, unfortunately, not only can it infect your PC, it can get worse. It can start jumping to others on the network, other computers connected to yours, further causing damage and disruption and making the cleanup and prevention of reinfection all the harder. The first decision you have to make if infected is how do you want to get your data back? Firstly, some more bad news. There is a timer on this. Most ransomware gives you 72 hours to make a decision of what you want to do and need to do. Your choices are pretty straightforward. Restore from backup if you have a valid backup and the timing of the infection does not put you in a position of data loss, or you pay the ransom. Unfortunately, we have come across many companies that didn't have valid backups, or also their backups were infected by the same ransomware that infected their production system. So paying the ransom was the only option left. We came across a company in 2014 who came to us 48 hours into the process. Their backups were also infected because they stored their backup data on the same place they stored their server, their live server data. This put them in the position of only having the option of paying the ransom and having very little time to do so. So what makes ransomware a scarier threat? We spoke about targeted attacks previously. Well, ransomware is not a targeted attack. Basically, someone sends as many emails to as many people as possible and works the percentage game. The hope is that the ransomware is activated enough times to make the process profitable. They don't care if it's a big company with thousands of people or a small company of 2 people. They just want to get their ransom paid. The more often it is, the more profitable their game. Paying the ransom and getting your information back is only half the battle. You still need to clean the virus from your PCs and servers before you can return your business to normal operations. This can take a lot of time also and extends the downtime of your business. Ransomware is constantly evolving and finding new ways to exploit holes in systems. The most recently publicized ransomware attacks, which were mainly in Europe, were built to take advantage of known holes in Windows XP, an operating system that should really no longer be in use, but for many reasons still is across the globe. Unfortunately, the ransomware we're fighting today will not be the same as the ransomware we are fighting tomorrow. The infection doesn't have to start in your office either, or through your business's systems. We all have people that work remotely, right? When a remote user connects to the business network, ransomware can take advantage of poor security and jump from the home PC to your office network. As we said, malware was a hobby, but now building ransomware is a real profitable business. A criminal one, but a business all the same. There's customer service if you can't figure out how to use Bitcoin. There's a starter kit to get you into this business. Anyone can go online and purchase a toolkit to help make their own ransomware. You can even buy lists of email addresses to send your ransomware to. Its accessibility has led to the term of cyber criminal rather than hacker. To be a hacker, at least you needed to have a very specialized skill set. The business is protected as they are paid in Bitcoin, the anonymous online currency we talked about earlier. What better than anonymous payment to encourage growing criminal behavior? As per earlier, the victims are anyone and everyone, both large and small companies and people at home. The point of this business is not to steal your information, but to hold it hostage until the ransom is paid. To show just how prevalent ransomware now is, around 30,000 companies are attacked by ransomware each month. And ransomware is a malware only in place since 2014. That's astonishing. Unfortunately, due to the nature of how ransomware is distributed, Bitcoin is managed, and how often it occurs, there really is no effective law enforcement to protect us. I'm not going to point out anything super complex or groundbreaking here. There are just basic things that we should be doing to protect our systems, applications, and data. Make some notes and check with your IT partner. Hopefully they will nod their heads and say, yeah, we've got that in place. You're completely covered. So first of all, backups. So a backup is not just a single copy of your data. This is important to know. It should be a versioned history of your data set. We should have backups for a number of days, at least going back 2 weeks, that allow us to restore from any of those previous 14 days at any point in time. Backups should not be stored in the same place as your live file applications, as I mentioned the company came across earlier in 2014. This should be stored in a different location and on a different type of storage medium. It should not just include your files, but also the very important configuration items of your servers and networks. If you can restore your data, but not the management portion of your systems, you will be left with a much longer restore process and a much longer downtime period. You should have more than one backup system in place. This is imperative. Like anything, backups fail. To have an alternative to restore from is extremely important. Finally, you should be using a trusted backup product. There are many options out there that provide the level of backup you require. Symantec, eVault, Datto, Carbonite, Backblaze are to name a few. We've come across a company recently who is using basically a file copy program to take a copy of any file as it changed and put it on a storage medium right beside the server that live users were accessing. When malware infected their system, automatically their backup system was encrypted also. That again left them the only option was with paying the ransom. Each device we use to access our files and applications needs to have antivirus protection. Although it is called antivirus software, it protects us from a lot more than just basic virus programs. This is the minimum level of security one should have in place. I say minimum, but in reality, this is not sufficient anymore. Another basic level of security is patch management. Each week, Microsoft, for instance, releases important security updates that remove holes from its Windows operating system. These updates should be applied automatically and on a scheduled basis. With those two items being minimum layers, what else should we have in place? Email filtering is the process where any email sent to you is scanned prior to arriving in your mailbox to see if it contains malicious software. Most people call it spam protection, but this security layer does a lot more than preventing you from receiving spam. This is probably the most important security layer for small businesses like ours, because if your data is going to be attacked by ransomware, it is by a huge percentage going to be delivered via email. Being that this is such an important security layer, don't just rely on your email provider's filtering service. Their drive every day is to ensure you can, with little or no issue, send and receive email. They are not as focused on the security of your email as, say, companies such as Mimecast, Barracuda, Proofpoint, etc. When you have an email filtering system in place, there are certain things we should have set in it as best practice. Firstly, it's very important it's properly configured by an IT professional. It is a simple tool, but there are very specific things that should be done in order for it to work correctly. Another item would be zip files should be blocked. There is no need to receive files in this format any longer. There are multiple other policies that need to be set, but most importantly to remember is the policies are to be put in place for everyone. The managing partner doesn't get special treatment. Web filtering blocks certain websites from being accessed by users. The more intelligent web filtering system will automatically build a list of sites it believes are compromised and prevent access to them. You can also block sites and types of sites. We actually recommend that any third-party email site is blocked, i.e. Hotmail, AOL, Gmail, etc. Why? Well, as a business, you invest in securing your email system with an email filtering service. If you allow staff to use their business PC to access a personal email account that does not have the same level of security filtering in place, you are just circumventing your own security. It is like placing an alarm system on your house, but not securing the back door for ease of access. If you have a home VPN, an infected home computer can take down your entire company. So what can you do to help secure remote access? Firstly, ensure that remote users have adequate protection on their devices, preferably the same protection in place on your business PCs. Ensure that remote access is limited to only what's necessary. Allow remote access, remote control access to a PC or terminal server, not direct access to file shares. No drive mapping from your computers at home, please. Finally, don't allow transfer of files from the remote user's PC to the server or vice versa. And of course, ensure that your firewall is set for encrypted access only. Microsoft allows for specific policies to be put in place to prevent certain actions from occurring on your PCs and servers. We can leverage this policy management to put in place policies that prevent malware from taking the action it needs to perform and cause the damage it wants to cause. A simple example is to prevent macros from executing when a Word or Excel file is opened. There are multiple other things that can be done. There are also solutions that are built to specifically take action against ransomware and malware. CryptoPrevent is one that we utilize. It prevents malicious software from executing in temporary directories on a Windows Server or PC. Directories that applications are not really supposed to be executing in. So when it comes to training, the first thing to note is it's much easier to hack a person than to hack a computer. The biggest weakness on your network is your people. Training is the key to preventing ransomware or any security breach from causing damage to your systems, data, and applications. Cyber criminals and hackers look for gullible employees, no matter how much security protection you put in place. Security layers follow the rules put in place. They don't make decisions or are not swayed by emotion to override those rules. People are. Your people need to understand how your business and they are vulnerable to attack and how to identify the methods used to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. Being that email is a key delivery method used, there are many great emailing tools available that can be used to see how your people react to, say, a ransomware phishing email. Utilize these tools, analyze the results, and train the more vulnerable staff more often. One thing I always talk about when talking about training with people is it is very important to remember that the least tech-savvy person in your firm has as much responsibility in securing your firm's files, applications, and reputation as the most tech-savvy person. Many of the things we just discussed are inexpensive and simple. Each is a separate security layer, and one really should have a version of each layer in place. As I said, and have repeated, one single layer of security is no longer sufficient to protect you any longer. Ransomware changes too quickly and adapts to security too fast for one layer to be sufficient. One of the most important policies that needs to be in place that I have not mentioned as of yet is a password policy. How many people on this webinar are forced to change their password access to their system every 90 or at least 180 days? How many are forced to use complex passwords? It is astounding to me how frequently this is not the case, especially because over 80% of breaches are due to poor or a complete lack of password management. Lastly, when it comes to all these great security layers and these great technology solutions, which are wonderful and fantastic to have in place, they still need to be managed. Bruce Schneider, one of the most prominent security professionals in the US, said, security is not a process. Security is a process, not a product. This means all these great layers you have in place are irrelevant if they are not constantly managed and monitored by an IT professional. So what's the other choice? Well, you could choose to do nothing, but obviously that makes you very vulnerable. Richard Clark, the former coordinator of the National Security Council, said, it's not if you will get hacked, it's when. The consequences of doing nothing can be very high. Loss of your files or access to applications. Downtime affecting your business and business's ability to operate. Affecting your client's ability to interact and collaborate with your people. And of course, just as important, if not more, your reputation with your clients. They expect that you keep their data safe, that you are doing the things that are considered best practice. So a breach occurs. What should we do? How do we respond? Firstly, no matter how much security is in place, how much training you perform, and how many policies your people follow, a breach may still occur. Protection is about minimizing the chance of a breach occurring, not eradicating it. The biggest banks in the world get robbed. The biggest entities in the world get breached. You may too. Firstly, get your IT partner involved immediately. Ensure your backups are good. If so, stop them from running to preserve what you have. We need to determine who is infected. What computers are running the ransomware that caused the issue in the first place? Disconnect them immediately from the network. If you do not do this, when you get the systems back up and running, they will be infected again. If you have areas of the network that are not affected as of yet, it may be very important to set those areas to read only, so that if some other outbreak occurs during this, while you're investigating what occurred already, those parts of the network cannot be infected also. If you have good backups, what do we do? Well, first, use antivirus and security tools to clean out any infected PCs and servers. Wiping and reinstalling if necessary. Ensure all the latest OS patches are installed in all your PCs and all your servers, including the ones that were not infected. Remember, the ransomware can jump from computer to computer. Delete all infected files. And restore the files from backup, but still preserve backups just in case you need them again. So, the scenario where you don't have good backups, which we have often come across. Firstly, we need to determine the ransom being asked for. You will be informed on the PC that was first infected of the amount. Buy the Bitcoin required to pay. This can be a process. The first time we came across somebody who I mentioned earlier in 2014, whose backups were compromised that had to buy Bitcoin, it was a completely different process then. We had to tell him, get $700 in cash, go downtown to an area in New York called the West Village, go to the fourth floor of an apartment, knock on the door, and hand over cash to this individual they had never met before in exchange for Bitcoin. More recently, last year, when we came across a company that also had issues with their backups and needed to buy Bitcoin, They were able to walk to an ATM in Midtown Manhattan and purchase Bitcoin with a credit card. In a lot of large cities, there are Bitcoin exchanges or ATMs now. But for many of you who are not in a big city area, you may have to set up an online account to purchase it. For small and mid-sized businesses, there is no point in negotiating. The ransom is what it is, and you have limited time to pay. You need to act quickly. As I mentioned, there is a countdown clock with ransomware. After 72 hours, they may not accept payments anymore, and your files are left encrypted. You will communicate with the person to pay via email. The address is provided to you on the infected PC and the instructions that they provide. As I said, they provide good customer service. Once payment is received, you will receive the decryption code in a matter of hours. Once the decryption code is received, follow the instructions provided again. Run the decryption process to decrypt all the files. This could take a period of time and all depends on the size of the data set that was encrypted. So some comments on this process. Firstly, you can see that it is a well-oiled machine. This goes back to it being a business. Profit is the cyber criminal's goal. It needs to be a slick process in order for payment to occur. Secondly, trust that decryption will work. We have yet to see it fail. It is imperative it does work for the cyber criminal. If it doesn't, people will stop paying and then there are no profits. It's not a viable business anymore. Lastly, once your systems are back online and your business and people are operating, an investigation needs to occur to see how the breach occurred. Did a security layer fail? Can something be done about that? Was a policy not followed? Should that policy be simplified, rectified, and improved? Was this down to human behavior? Do we need to revisit the training strategy and frequency? If these questions are not asked and the proper actions are not taken, you could find yourself in the same situation again. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and being engaged. I'd also like to thank Morris, my partner, for the intro and collaborating on this presentation. I will hand it back to him now to open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Darragh. I have to say what got me the most, and I've seen, the outline of this webinar before, but I never saw your final speaking notes, was when you spoke about customer service. That's amazing that there's actually customer service for the people creating, running these crimes. For a minute, I imagined somebody, 20 years ago going to rob a bank, and when he points a gun at the teller and says, open the safe, and the teller says, I'm sorry, I don't have the combination, the bank robber says, hold on just a minute, let me call customer service to see what to do right now. That's amazing. So we do have a bunch of questions that came in, and I know our time is limited, so I'm going to try to go through them. Okay, one question here. You mentioned offline backups. Are you referring to tape backups or hard drive backups?
So when it comes to offline backups, we're talking about the backups not being in the same storage medium or location as your live data. So for instance, let's just say you have a server that you store all your files on. Your backup, in some instances, would be another drive in that server. That should not be the case. Secondly, it should be on another medium. It should be completely on another medium outside of the server and hopefully in a location and administered by a different level of security. So when the server is infected, the backup can't be infected. And lastly, we talked about multiple backups with different mediums. So we should have something outside the office. Cloud-based backups are the simplest way of doing this. And there's multiple different solutions that allow that to happen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Another question here that came in regarding backups. You spoke about restoring data versus restoring management systems. Can you clarify what that means?
Okay, so let's just talk about a Microsoft network because that's the most prominent type. Ransomware is looking to encrypt the data that your applications or your use are your Word and Excel and PDF documents. When it does that, it can also take action on the server that's storing those files and serving those applications to you. And if it damages that server, you then need to be able to repair that server. Every server has a logical management piece that integrates to an overall logical management piece called the directory. The directory basically holds all your usernames and passwords in your security groups, and it allows access in and out of your system. So if you're not backing up that piece of the puzzle, if you restore all your data, but your servers have now been compromised or in a bad state, when you rebuild your server, you now may have to start rebuilding all your usernames, all your security groups, all your file permissions. It's a lot of work after the fact. You want to be able to restore your data, servers are compromised, restore the management portion of that piece so people can just log in as they did the day before with the same username and password. That's actually a very it's a very small answer to a bigger question. If whoever asks that question would like to be in touch with me to get a better answer, you can see my contact details on that slide, or to get a more rounded out answer.
All right, thank you, Darragh. So I think we have time for two last questions. Somebody asked, does we store our files in Dropbox? Does that help protect us? And I would say, if you can, maybe speak about Dropbox. And there's a lot of Dropbox-like services out there. I don't know if your answer can apply across the board to the, Dropbox, Box, Ignite. There's so many of them out there.
Okay, so from an initial breach, no, because let's just say in the simplest form, you have two people in a small law firm using Dropbox. Both of them access Dropbox from their computers, and they synchronize access in and out of Dropbox, synchronize their files in and out of Dropbox. Once one of their computers becomes compromised, they both have access to all the files in Dropbox. So now everything in Dropbox is available for the ransomware to actually hit and infect and encrypt also. Now what Dropbox does have is it does have a version-based backup of every file, but what it doesn't have is a really simple way to go through when it's hundreds of thousands of files and restore them very quickly. You actually really need to go through support for Dropbox to get that done. Dropbox does have support, but it's not live interactive voice support. It's all email based or interactive through their portal, which in this type of instance could be very frustrating, and it could be very time consuming to get your files back. So the other type of systems that that work in the same way of Dropbox would handle it in the same manner. There are different systems, however, that give you more control. So there is another system called Ignite, which in the instance of an infection occurring and the files being infected in Ignite, you would have the ability yourself to restore all the files that you require back into the Ignite storage area. So you're not protected. You have the ability to restore. Dropbox makes it a little bit cumbersome, but it works. And there's other systems that type of handle that situation better.
Okay, great. And somebody asked a question. This is a little bit of a scary one, but they're asking, can it get any worse in the future?
Yeah.
So I guess they're asking you to predict the future here, Darragh. So I'm also going to ask, what's the stock market going to be at tomorrow?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't play that game. If I did, Morris, both you and I will be probably on a beach somewhere. But it's already getting worse. For instance, the average ransomware infection cost 2 years ago about $750. Last year it was about $1,500, and now it's $2,500. And this is being driven, I don't know if anyone saw the news story there recently, but I think Bitcoin at one point was one Bitcoin was valued at $1,500, I think. And that drives the ransom, obviously, because you pay 1, 2, 3 Bitcoins. So now the average ransom is becoming $3,000 or $4,000. So that's one way in which it's getting worse. The second way is that, as I said, it's not hackers, it's criminals. And so as they find out, if they find out, and there's ways and means they can do that, the entity that they're actually after causing the encryption and the shutdown of, they'll start increasing the ransom just because of who that person is. A big example of this was the California hospital 2 years ago, where I think, if I'm right, the actual ransom, because of who the entity was was just automatically raised to $86,000. Now, they ended up paying approximately $20,000, but that was literally just because of who they were. Lastly, who knows what they could do next? Could they start looking at the value of the data and start deciding that not only do they want a ransom paid, but maybe they keep a copy and distribute it for other means, selling your data onto other people. Now, that's quite nefarious, but crime is quite nefarious. So there is maybe always somewhere that they can sell data to. I mean, for instance, to Equifax. I'm pretty sure there'd be a lot of criminal suitors out there to actually look at purchasing that private information for people's credit histories, because it's a very lucrative business already, irrelevant of this Equifax breach. So yeah, it could get worse. The most important thing is to understand that while we're talking about very big breaches most of the time, we're talking about very large entities and enterprises most of the time. Most of the crime is going to occur, most of the money is going to be made through companies under the size of 50 staff, where all of us are probably sitting a lot of the time. That's really what we have to be prepared for. And there's basic tenets of things that we should be doing in order to protect ourselves.
All right. Darragh, thank you so much for your presentation today, and thank you to all of our attendees. Darragh's contact information is on the screen if anybody wants to take it down to send them questions that come up in the future. As well, within about a day or so, we will be emailing out a copy of this recorded webinar in case you missed anything. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.